Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome all to this special event this evening. I also welcome all those who joined us online this evening from all over the country, particularly the 10 chapters of MMA. So we have a very interesting session this evening. As you're all aware, this is a monthly event that we do, read and go. But giving time to those who are still having tea outside, maybe a couple of minutes. Some very, very important events that are coming up in MMA, just in case you missed out in your mail, I'll just read out 2 or 3 events. The next big event coming up is on the 23rd of this month. This is a panel discussion on the recent trends in cybersecurity. We have Mr. Thiru Amaresh Pujari, is the Director General of Police, Crime Wing, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. He will be joining us. We have Mr. V. Rajendran, who is the Chairman of the Digital Security Association of India. And we have Mr. Shiv Balaji, who is the Cybersecurity Professional and CEO of Block Online Solutions Private Limited. Live at 6 p.m. Please register and join us that day. Then we have a very interesting event. We all are aware what's happening in Sri Lanka. So there is a discussion on the situation in Sri Lanka right now. It's Sri Lanka from pearl drop to teardrop. That's the title of the event. We have Ms. Nirupama Subramanian, Senior Journalist, National Editor, Strategic Affairs, Indian Express. She is joining us. Mr. Srinivas Babu, Chief Executive, S. Duraiswamy and Sons, Tirupur. Then we have Mr. Abbas Setwala, Chief Administrative Officer of Expo Freight Private Limited. And we have Mr. Satyamurthy, Convener of the Policy Matters. He was heading ORF, as you are all aware, until very recently. He is going to be, they are going to be there on a very, very interesting talk about Sri Lanka. Please don't miss it. That will be on the 25th. And on the 26th, this is absolutely not to be missed event. We have a talk on the art of management. Mr. D. Shivkumar, the Group Executive President, Aditya Birla Group, he will be here. He will be in discussion with Mr. R. Ramraj, Founder, Sifi Technologies. For this audience of MMA, I think both of them are not strangers. That's going to be a really interesting event. It's going to be all about management, so don't miss out that event as well. All 3 events which I read out are going to be having, we are going to have live here at MMA Management Center. So please do register, please do join us. And all those joining us online, as usual, please do join us remotely. So now, without further ado, I think I'll invite the guests of the day to come and don their place on the dais. May I request Ms. Sangeeta to lead the other guests. Ms. Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome them with a round of applause. Ms. Sangeeta, we have Mr. Anand, Mohanram, and Mr. Navaneeth. Please. Yes, please settle down so that we can start. Great. So we have the book this evening, which is titled Leadership Wisdom, The 8 Rituals of Visionary Leaders, authored by Robin Sharma, who is best known for his book on Who Sold My Ferrari. So here we are, getting into the discussion. I'll request Ms. Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh, who has been heading, facilitating this Read and Go program once in a quarter. So last time she was here in the month of February, and today here we are, once again she is here with us for facilitating this fireside chat, or we call the discussion on the theme of the book. Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh, joined by Mr. Anand Mohanram and Mr. Navaneeth. Let me briefly introduce them to you all, though I know all of them are known to this audience. Sangeeta has a corporate experience of over 25 years with multinationals, and her latest position was as the Executive Director, Chief Financial Officer at Dun & Bradstreet. She is a Chartered Accountant, Management Accountant. She has completed executive education from Harvard Business School. She is a high-performance business coach from the International Coaching Federation. She is also a TEDx speaker and a best-selling author. And more than anything else, she is a big supporter of MMA. She never says no to any request that we have. And she has been given the Nightingale Award by the Society of Auditors, Leading Woman Chief Financial Officer, Innovator in Finance, awarded 100 Inspiring Authors of India. Thank you, Sangeeta. Thanks so much for joining, ladies and gentlemen. She deserves a round of applause for all the accolades that she has earned. Then we are joined by Mr. Anand Mohanram. Thanks, Mr. Anand, for joining us this evening. Anand is Managing Director with Mr. Cooper Group, India, with close to 26 years of experience in IT and IT-enabled services. He's currently heading this company, Mr. Cooper Group, India. Prior to joining Mr. Cooper, he spearheaded the digital transformation journey at the Singapore Post and helped set up the technology team in Chennai. He also had a stint in Infosys for over 12 years, and outside his professional career is one of the co-founders of this Mohanram Foundation, a non-profit organization in the field of education. And he just told me that he is very passionate about mathematics and numbers. So I urge all of you to visit his blog site, which is also given here on the screen. So for all those of you who also find curious, we are all curious about numbers. Thanks, Anand, once again for joining us. And the third guest this evening, once again, is not a stranger to MMA audience. He's been with in our committee also. Mr. Navaneeth, the CEO of The Hindu. Thanks, Mr. Navaneeth. Navaneeth has over 2 decades of experience in the media industry across the publishing, radio, broadcasting, and media agency verticals. That's a very rare combination. He's worked in Jakarta, Indonesia between 2016 and 2019 before heading back to Chennai and head the Hindu Group now. So across media sectors, he has hands-on experience and acquired expertise in the field of general management, sales and marketing, brand management, media planning, and I don't think he's left anything out there. So we all know how passionate he is. Thanks to all three of them for making this evening so very special for us. Now I'll request Ms. Sangeeta to take forward this discussion till about 6:45, 6:50, when we can open the house for the Q&A for the audience. Thanks. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Right, so it's nice to come back again for yet another session of Read and Grow, because that's a great way, I think, all of us get to read more books and then share knowledge, So when you're reading the book to present and share the knowledge, the perspective is different. So thanks to MMA for organizing this month after month. So like we know, today's book is Leadership Wisdom. So why did I pick this book? Because leadership is a topic I'm extremely passionate about, and as a leadership coach, what I have observed is many people, when they work with me, one of the common things they say is, I want to become a better leader. So what does it really take to become a better leader? And this book, Leadership Wisdom by Robin Sharma, shares some very lovely nuggets on leadership, and that is the reason why I chose this book. What did I like about this book? I think the smooth flow, very easy read, relatable and pretty simple, and it leaves you with a feeling like, oh, I wish I also have somebody like this to guide me and coach me on leadership, So that's what the book leaves you with. So let me give a quick summary and a broad overview of the book, and then we will go to the panelists and, get their perspectives. So the book is about a guy called Peter Franklin. Now, Peter was extremely dynamic, but short-tempered, who would micromanage every aspect of the business, and he did not know how to manage people and build relationships. He started a company called Global View Software Solutions along with a friend, and though the business was successful initially, very soon it started to plummet because the morale of the employees was very poor. It was losing market share, losing profits, and it was in a downturn. So Peter was extremely stressed about it because there was low productivity, very little creativity, and there was little trust within the organization. He did not know how to lead, and he was, at this very poor juncture. And that's when an old friend of his reappears in his life as a new avatar. So this guy is called Julian Mantle. And Julian decides to share the leadership wisdom with Peter. So how did Julian get enlightened about leadership? Julian was apparently in the Himalayas, and there was somebody called Yogi Raman, who was a great sage of Sivanna, who tells him and talks to him about leadership. And that's what this book is about. So, according to Yogi Raman, leadership is a philosophy of life. And leadership, when it's focused in the direction of a worthy purpose, that is a game changer. So, leadership is not about position, but about action. And most importantly, leadership is about developing people. So, he shares in this book 8 rituals that every leader needs to follow. Visionary leader, that's what he says. So what are these 8 leadership rituals? So the first one, I'll quickly take you through on, some of the points that stood out for me as a reader under each of these rituals. So the first ritual that he says is link paycheck to purpose. Because he says, purpose is a great motivator. And every human, he says, has a hunger to make a difference in the lives of others. And therefore, when there is a compelling cause, if a leader can identify the compelling cause or the purpose and emotionally engage with the team, that becomes a huge game changer. So he gives a beautiful example. He says, during World War II, there were people who were just packing parachutes and very tedious, and they were not greatly thrilled about what they were doing. It was pretty monotonous as well. So one of the leaders, he called everybody and then he reminded them about the value of the work that they were doing. He said how their work enables to save more lives, and he reconnected them with the bigger picture, the purpose of why they were doing what they were doing. And guess what? After that, the productivity just soared like anything. So that's why he says purpose is something very important. And he also suggests you could probably do a leadership audit of your own self, how good or what are the things that you need to improve about your leadership. The second ritual is manage by mind and lead by heart. So he says visionary leaders, they connect very deeply with their people, and trust is the core thing, everybody needs to have as leaders. He also touches upon the power of listening with the intent to understand what the other person has to say. And he also says the deepest principle of human nature is the craving to be appreciated. I'm sure all of us as humans, we love to be appreciated on a work that we have done well. So he talks about that, and he also says as a leader, you can show minor acts of caring, and because you're caring and concerned about the welfare of your people. So that's what the ritual 2 is about. The ritual 3 is, he says, reward routinely and recognize relentlessly. He says leaders have to become coaches to ensure the success of their team, and he says that's why being a coach is important. Again, he stresses upon the importance of the recognition and sincere appreciation for whatever efforts the people are doing. And he says when you reward the team, reward them with whatever motivates them. Just because you think something is going to reward doesn't work that way. Find out what really motivates your team. And when you're appreciating, you need to be specific, sincere, immediate, and you do it in public, because that's when the team is going to feel a lot more kicked about it. The fourth ritual is, he says, surrender to change. Because as a leader, you need to know how to manage what is unexpected. And this is a very nice thing, he says, to change the results that you're getting, you must change the things that you are doing. And he also says, it's important to create a learning culture, because the best antidote for fear is the knowledge, right? Because when you change, there is growth, and change is essential for evolution. He even says nature loves change, and I thought that was so true, right? We have so many seasons and different things that nature produces, so change is important. And he also says corporations spend about 50 to 70% on salaries, but they invest less than 1% on training the team. He says it's important to improve the team's abilities, because the growth of your company is directly proportional to the growth of your people. So I thought that's pretty valid. The fifth ritual is also something interesting. He talks about focus on what is worthy, because know what is the high yielding activities, whatever that you're doing. You should know what are the things that remain to be undone. right? Because if you want to focus on everything, it doesn't happen. So what are the things that remain undone, and switch from being busy to achieving your results. Don't just be busy doing umpteen number of things, be a lot more result focused. And a lovely thing he talks about is something, the time leadership, which says the time leadership is discover how you lead your time. Because if you don't lead time, time will lead you. And he also says, if your priorities don't get put on your planner, then other people's priorities will. So he's combined the focus on the worthy along with the time. I thought it was very nice. The sixth ritual is the leader leads thyself. So that's more about the self-development, because as a leader, only if you develop well, then the business or the organization grows well. So he talks about 5 things here, which is discipline of personal renewal, discipline of abundant knowledge, and also the principle of association. With whom are you associated? What are the kind of books that you read? The third is the discipline of physicality, where you care for the body. Then the discipline of early waking, and the discipline of the deathbed mentality. Because he says, the moment you think about your deathbed, that's when you have a sense of urgency, passion, and the drive to do whatever you want to do. The 7th ritual is, he says, see what everyone sees, but think what no one thinks. So he says, everybody is creative. You need to unlock your natural state of creativity, reward curiosity, and recognize the new ideas your team members are giving. And he says, people feel very stifled about their creativity if they think that there's something they have to lose. And that's why they don't like to take the risk. But creating that atmosphere helps people to come up with their natural creative self. And the last, ritual 8, which is again, something very powerful, he says, link leadership to legacy. Because this one deeply resonates with me, because he says, how much value have you added and how many lives have you improved? The reason this really resonates with me is that's one of the reasons why I decided to quit my corporate job and do what I'm doing as a business and leadership coach, because I felt I need to have a purpose where I'm able to create an impact with others. So this deeply resonated with me. And he also says, what makes greatness is beginning something that does not end with you, because that's what legacy is all about, right? And he talks about a very beautiful story here of Leo Tolstoy. It's about somebody called Ivan Lynch. So Ivan was only concerned about being successful, appearing successful rather, instead of even doing what was right. He says he got married, had kids, not because he wanted to, because that's what was expected out of him, right? So Ivan led this sort of a life, and he built a beautiful house. Everything was set, but yet he was ill-tempered. He wouldn't treat people well. And one day he had a fall, and slowly he was nearing towards the end of his life. And it was at that moment that he felt, what if my whole life was lived in a wrong manner? That was like a moment of awakening. It was a tad late, but that's when he felt that way, because he started reflecting on what life is all about. He says, life is actually a great gift. And he felt, I could have actually contributed so much more, contributed greatly. I could have taken risks, I could have dared, I could have dreamt, and I could have done so much more. He realizes it only in the end, towards the end of his life. So he says, our duty is to serve all and enrich the lives of people around us. And that was, I thought, very, very beautiful the way he had said it. So this is like the gist of the book. Was there something that could have been better? From my perspective, I thought it could have been slightly more crisper, because he's combined the leadership wisdom in a fictional format. So I thought the fiction could have been slightly lesser. And I thought he could have added a lot more examples, shorter anecdotes and stories to make it more lively. But despite that, I think the book is a great read, lovely nuggets of wisdom that he shared, some great points that resonates with most people. And I also liked the fact that he was giving a summary highlight at the end of each chapter. So to conclude, I would say that follow these 8 rituals if you want to be a great leader. And you could also have like an accountability partner, like a leadership coach or somebody where you're accountable for your progress, because many times these things are easy to read and then it's so good, but are we actually applying these wisdoms in our life? So that's what is a crucial thing that we need to ask. So with that, I have given you all the overall summary, so feel free to read the book. And now let's dig into our panelists to see what they think about the book. So yeah, question answers is your viva and thesis.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, so Navaneeth, let's start with you. What were your key takeaways from the book? How much have you read? So let's check that. Whatever resonated with you.
Yeah, I read the book. Key takeaways, I'll speak about the content of the book and the format of the book. I think in essence, what the book is trying to say is that people in leadership positions are a privileged lot. Of course, people deserve to be there 9 out of 10 times. And the positions leaders occupy give them a lot of status. You have access to people, you get invited to share your thoughts and books. And this is the privilege of the position. While positions offer people in positions of leadership status, I think leaders should really be concerned about what they do to enhance the stature of the positions they occupy. And stature of a position you occupy gets enhanced by your thoughts, words and actions. And everything in this book, right about connections to legacy to purpose, is linked to that larger thought. And if the job of a leader is to create impact, I think there's depth of impact and width of impact. Not all of us are a Martin Luther King or a Mahatma Gandhi or an Einstein. We are normal human beings. Chasing width of impact is extremely difficult. But if you have a team around you that has a common vision, aligned on those values, then you're a bunch of people individually working on depth of impact, and width of impact is a natural outcome. So to that extent, leadership, and I hear people saying leadership is a lonely job. I feel leadership is a team job. It never is a lonely job because there's only so much you can do. That's about the content of the book. I think the book works because it's got a lovely narrative style. And because all of us have great thoughts, or at least we have good thoughts. But it's important to communicate those thoughts and look at the structure of the book. It borrows from mythology. It simply works because it borrows the best storytelling techniques of mythology, and you look at any religion, the technique is the same. It says wisdom is elusive, wisdom is up above there. So there's Yogi Raman and his fellow hermits and sages who live in the Himalayas. So you could be in Himalayas, you could be in heaven, wherever, but wisdom comes from worldly detachment. And this Julian Mantle, who was successful, but in a moment of epiphany, he realized the life he has lived before is not worth it. Same with everything in mythology.
Yes.
So he receives wisdom from the sages and he becomes a messenger. In a way, he is spreading the gospel.
Correct.
And he goes and imparts this wisdom to somebody else who thought Julian in his former life was a superstar. So this credence to what he is saying because it's coming from a source of authority and respect. I love the fact that the book uses this narrative technique. It set me thinking about how we can tell our own stories better.
Nice. Thank you for that. Anand, so what do you think? What are your thoughts on the book?
Sure, thanks Sangeeta. Adding to what Navaneeth said, first of all, it was profound in terms of that rituals were aligned very well. It was almost the entire life cycle being told over a story, linking paycheck to purpose. So what is the purpose of us being born here, right? From there it starts off. Then you have a family, so you have a team. You talk about how do you groom, how do you work with the family, similarly team. And then over a period of time when you gain experience and mature, it was a question of what you need to continue to learn. Learning is a constant process, so it talks about that. And then it gets into the concept of change. I think all of us have heard change is the only constant. We have heard this many times, but it also very well explains why change is necessary when you go through in your career, irrespective of what role you perform and so on. And then towards the end, it talks about leaving a legacy. So that's where I felt the entire life cycle, you kind of do a walkthrough. And to your point, yes, there could have been more practical examples, but I was able to relate to a lot of real life examples when I went through each and every chapter. We were talking earlier, I had to go back and forth to relate to, okay, this is what happened in my family or in my team, and it
Anything
perfectly
you would
fit
like
it.
to share specifically?
Yeah. So to begin with, purpose to linking paycheck to purpose. So the first thing struck me was, I mean, I rewinded back to 2003 when I was working with Infosys. Had a 2-year program to manage all of that. We were working in the software industry, so we were delivering for one of the US clients. And it was a 75-member team. That was a job interested on me. But I had almost 60, 65 people coming fresh out of college, which was normally the norm in the industry, even today. Right? But bright set of graduates who are willing to learn. It was a 2-year program. It was a grueling 14-hour schedule. But we worked together as a team. The one thing that was important was for the team to know what is that they are working towards. What is the purpose? It wasn't because Anand told them to deliver something to a client sitting 10,000 miles away. I requested my business head when I visited US for 3 weeks and then came back to deliver this program. We invited him here. I told him, whatever you explained to me on the purpose, I want you to address the team and tell them, next 2 years will be magic. You would see that happen. So the business head traveled here. We didn't focus, we both addressed the team, we didn't focus on the dollar value or the potential impact to the company. Instead, it was clearly explained that they were one of the largest players in the beverage space, and this platform which we were developing back then was going to get 51% of the revenue, while revenue was spoken about, but it impacted a lot of people in the warehouse and distribution centers, and how many jobs would be lost if this is not delivered in 2 years time frame. So he beautifully explained the purpose in terms from a business angle. A developer of mine who used to sit next to me, I remember the day when we went live. This was in 2005, exactly 2 years after we started, 4 o'clock in the morning. So we were all in office because the platform was going live. After this guy writes a mail to his friends based out of US stating, from today onwards, all the shipments that are going to be delivered, the beverages that are going to be delivered, is written on the code that I have written. This is based on the code, which is a proud moment, and that ensured that we delivered a successful platform. So linking paycheck to purpose resonated very well, because as long as you explain your team why you are delivering what you are delivering, they are going to deliver without you asking a question or micromanaging that. So for me, that the entire book, I could relate it to a lot of personal stories, and over the next course of 20-25 minutes we'll try to share that. Because a lot of these we read through other books, we hear, this day information is gold, right? Information is there everywhere. You pick up a mobile, you get some 3 notifications on leadership. But it's all the more important to identify what are the practical implementations of that and do that. One last point which I liked in the way it was structured, leadership was not about position or title. Each one of us have a role to play as a leader. My team always asked me during my town hall, what should I do in next 5 years to become a leader? I normally used to say, you can already do that role, and some of you are already doing that. It starts with few qualities like empathy, understanding your team very well. So don't associate a leader with a CEO or a title. Each one of us has a role to play. Lastly, it's not just, leadership is not a business role. Each one of us at home is a leader. So my mother has been a leader. I'll probably pass that when I come to the next question. So each one of us play the role even in our personal life as well.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Nice example also you shared, Anand. So Navaneeth, As a leader, did all the 8 rituals resonate with you, or was there something you didn't like, or you think something could have been included? What do you think?
No, I didn't think about what else could have been included. I liked all 8 of them. Simple to understand, easy to comprehend. Each of them, execution on a consistent basis is, each of them have their own complexities.
Yes.
But one thing that really stood out for me, and that's something you touched upon when you spoke, is there's a lovely line in this book which asks the question, is your audio in sync with your video? And we normally say, do you walk the talk? But I thought, especially in the era of OTTs, when sometimes when you're watching content, audio and video doesn't match, you know how painful it is and how inauthentic it looks. And a good way to ask that question is have a hard look at the mirror. But the sad truth is we are human beings. However hard we look at the mirror, we see what we see. So it's good to be surrounded by people who are critical. Always felt one of the ways to encourage critical feedback is to believe that people who give you feedback are those who are really interested in your progress in your career because they want you to do well. I'm a huge fan of having coaches and mentors. I've had a coach every 2-3 years and try and get honest feedback. I thought that was that line was very powerful, of whether your audio is in sync with your video. Yeah.
Great, that's a very nice one. So I'm glad you touched upon that. Over to you, Anand. Anand, for me, when I read it, I loved the ritual 1 and 8, the purpose and the legacy. So those were my favorites. So what about you? What was your favorite?
Yeah, it's always hard to pick favorites in these topics. 1 and 8 surely stands out for me as well because 1 is about linking the purpose to paycheck and the other one is leaving a legacy more in terms of what people should remember you for, right? And what people should talk about. But even the rituals 2 to some of them in between where it talks about how teamwork is important, how to carry people and including rewards and recognition. I think, and then pretty much listening passionately and I mean those are very important qualities in my opinion which resonated very well. I think one thing I strongly believe in while we all talk about this as well that everyone needs to be a team player, the leader is as good as the team. It's also important to ensure that the team gets the necessary support and recognition all along. Normally there is always a tendency to postpone some of these. I mean, it happens in every industry for that matter, where appreciation, sometimes people would think, should we wait for 2-3 weeks to allow things to stabilize before we send out that communication? You have lost it there itself, right? Appreciate for what has already been done. Don't worry about what will happen 3 weeks later. Because you may not lose that individual there, but a sulking individual who probably doesn't speak out is much more of a risk. That means already you have lost the individual in terms of his or her enthusiasm. Second, in terms of, I normally lay a lot of stress in terms of connecting with the team by meeting them in person. So whether it was my stint at Infosys or in Mr. Cooper, I try to get to know almost everyone by name. I may not remember every time when I cross on the floor, but do make an attempt to understand them by name. The other ritual I normally follow, and which is what I could resonate with some of the things outlined in the book. Every morning I spend 10 minutes just to wish everyone, send a personalized note on their birthdays. So every day we have birthdays or anniversaries, people completing 1 year, 2 year. 10 o'clock we get a mailer. So obviously I don't have everything remembered or kept in mind, but my team does a good job of sending a mailer out at 10 o'clock. 10 to 10:15 is always my ritual to send that out. That has been so important for me. One, in terms of more than for me, I think I've seen the individuals responding to that. And there has been cases where I was probably on travel, let's say on business travel, 2 days I couldn't catch up. One of them who didn't know I was traveling, he said, actually, I was expecting your mail, didn't come through. Then I realized that wherever I am, I had to kind of log in and send this out. So Saturdays, Sundays, it doesn't matter. Send that out. What it does is, one, the individuals also know that the company cares, and they also get a bit more informal. A lot of conversations can get formal, people go by role and designation. It's important to make the individual to come forward and ask you questions, right? When people join or quit a job, a lot of us talk about salary benefits as a primary criteria. Believe me, many individuals look for holistic benefits. They do look at opportunities to connect 30 minutes to talk about their financial investment planning. I personally done that with my team. That is what they value, because salary can change from one company to another, then it becomes stagnant. What remains with them is the experience that they get in a holistic manner, mentoring, coaching, all of that. So it's very important from that perspective. And I think, in my opinion, a couple of those rituals stand out, but the underlying themes have been pretty powerful wherever it was linked to the people and people aspects.
Nice, very nice share. Thanks for that, Anand. Navaneeth, another line that quite stood out for me in the book is, he says, one of the greatest gifts that you can give anyone is your 100% attention. So he stresses upon the power of listening, right? So would you like to share something? Have you experienced anything on the listening part?
You know, I always wonder, all of us are poor listeners. To the extent I'd asked you, what did you ask me? So, we are by nature poor listeners. One can, if one is conscious about it, you become a better listener tomorrow than you are today. And the analogy I try to use is, look at how we travel. We spend enormous amount of time planning a trip. We go to a place. We want to see 300 places in that place. Do everything in a cramped trip. You travel for relaxation, you come back tired. You go to a place, you spend money on the taxi, you spend money on the hotel, you bargain with a good guide. Often you see a place without a guide, you have seen it, you have no context, don't have a history of the place, understanding of it. That to me is the role of a coach, and coaches can help in getting, because we want to see 10 things in a day, we are not in the moment. While at place A, you are figuring about how to get place B, and listening is same, because we cramp our day with too many things. We often confuse activity with productivity. Activity is not productivity. You are better off doing 3 good meetings than 8 meetings in a day. Prepare well. But I think the biggest barrier to listening in my mind is the fear of not knowing answers.
Nice perspective.
If you have the courage to say, I don't know, because we are hardwired to listen and offer advice, offer solutions. You'll have a friend who's had a bad day. He just wants to talk to you. But while he's talking, we tell him 300 things he should be doing in his life. Sometimes people just want to talk. And often in meetings, because we think our job is to solve for problems, and we are worried that we don't know the solutions to that, our mind is thinking of what answer to make up. I found that to say, I don't know, let's figure this out, we'll come back to this, is extraordinarily liberating. And that allows you to listen far better. So long as you don't do it all the time. I mean, if you always keep saying, I don't know, there's a problem. But you can say, I don't know, to a new problem. I find that extremely liberating. It does work. For that, one needs to have a supreme sense of security. And that comes from knowing many things and being curious. So to say that I don't know, let's figure this out, you'll be in the present and listen. Otherwise, our mind is always making up an answer, and hence we lose.
I also think the poor listening is because of the distractions, the inner chatter, the Mighty Halvey talks about in the inner game of tennis. That really resonated with me, so I always felt that. And I would also like to give the example of Nelson Mandela on listening, So he says the leader speaks in the end, after listening to everybody else, and then he shares his views and perspectives. So I thought that was also a very powerful leadership trait. Yeah. Anand, to you. So he says, one of the lines was, explain the reasons behind your decision. Be transparent with your people. Now, while that is a good thing, there is always a confidentiality aspect as well, because what can you share, what can you not share to the team? That is one thing. And one other thing that, Navneeth, when I had asked you, is there something else that he could have included? I don't know. I was just thinking, he didn't stress much about communication and also empathy. So, I don't know, but I thought those are also key leadership traits. But Anand, what do you think? Do you like to share as a leader? Do you share everything with your team, or, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that was an interesting point there. Even I was spending some time to see is there a right or a wrong answer. Unfortunately not. There is mid ground we have to take. Communication, in my opinion, you need to communicate as much as possible so that the individuals are aware and not hearing from someone else, right? Don't give rise to any speculation, rumors, arrest that upfront. Communicate about the company's performance, what we are planning over the next 3 months. I think as an organization, for example, last 2 years during COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty in terms of where the industry is headed. Both in US and India, we ensured that we communicated the company's health, financial health on a proactive basis. A lot of the times individuals used to come to town hall and said, we already received this email. Thanks for being open and so on. So it's important to communicate a lot of the key decisions that are happening at a company level, which directly impacts the employee, because strongly I believe they should hear from the horse's mouth directly rather than in a coffee bar conversation, which gives rise to a lot of speculation.
Great
stating
also, yeah.
At the same time, sometimes we take it to the extreme in the name of open feedback and open communication, right? Open feedback is okay, but the age-old truth in terms of praise in public and admonition private, I think still works, because not everyone is comfortable to hear open feedback in a public forum. If 10 of us stand there and you just point out that the person has said what you did was completely incorrect, different way of taking that person inside a room and say what happened and go through that. At the same time, there are certain roles where you are expected to maintain confidentiality, and that's why you are entrusted that responsibility. When something is communicated to you which has a direct impact on another team member and not you, there we need to be more sensitive and keep the communication in such a way that you don't filter and pass it on, but you wait for an opportune time, appropriate time rather, and pass on the communication. So it has to be a balanced affair in my opinion. He hasn't touched upon a lot on that. It can't be always open communication for every topic. It has to be, you need to keep people informed so that they take right decisions, but also sensitive about certain communication, timing wise. If it can't, people belong to diverse group these days, so you need to ensure that the diversity aspects are also taken care before you go ahead and broadcast something.
True, very, very valid. Yes. Navneeth, since you are from the media, and Ritual 7 talks about creativity. So it will be nice if you can share your thoughts. How can anyone unleash their creativity? Because he says everybody is creative. So what do you think? How can people get more creative in whatever they're doing?
Sorry. I agree, everybody is creative, and creativity is not confined to what we traditionally define as creative jobs.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is to have the belief that, see, the way our companies are organized hierarchically because you need hierarchy to run companies. You need hierarchies to run business efficiently and so on. Ideas have no hierarchy. Companies are structured on a hierarchy base, but people should realize that ideas don't have hierarchy and anybody can have a good idea. And it works differently in different contexts. Now, if ideas is a proxy for creativity, there should be alignment on what does an idea mean. Ideas always are not about doing new things. Ideas are also stopping doing something, right?
Or making something better.
Yeah, so you can stop doing something which releases bandwidth. You can make something better which improves efficiency. You can create something new which secures the future. In my mind, ideas are in those domains. Some of them come from conversations. I found that agenda-driven conversations, structured meetings, are good at finding solutions. but ideas come from asking the right questions. Often, I struggle with asking the right questions. And the last 2 years, because of COVID, because you're not meeting diverse people, you're not meeting a different set of, and you're not having unstructured, freewheeling conversations, the ability to ask the right questions goes away. So I think open-ended conversations allows you to ask the right questions. And sometimes we do these workshops, ideas workshop, and the golden rule of an ideas workshop is there are no bad ideas. There's an idea which could have worked better in a different set of circumstances. There's an idea that's far ahead of time, or there's an idea that's ripe for execution. Smaller teams, I find it far more easier. For instance, I worked 3 years in the radio business. And of all the businesses I have worked in, I find the radio business extraordinarily creative because the radio experience is an experience of theater of the mind. You're just using sound to communicate. So we had a ritual there. So we had what you call a urga jadi. And anybody could drop an idea. Anybody could drop an idea, anybody could drop a script. And once a week we used to open it. It could be anonymous. And we never shot down an idea, but the best ideas got picked up, produced, and they were on air the same day.
Wow.
And 40% of the ideas we produced came from our front office security.
Wow.
He was not even an employee. I mean, he was an outsourced. That worked in that context. I've tried to do that in larger settings. But I think if everybody does this in smaller areas, within their floor, within their teams, you are better off. But maybe we could do a far better job of this than we do. I can do a far better job than I currently do of that.
I really loved the two things that you said, radio, yes, I mean, like you said, since it's only the audio, definitely yes, creativity is important. So I had never thought of it till you mentioned, and yes, the Urga Jadi idea was also very nice. Thanks for sharing that. Anand, to you. Again, in this line in the book, he says, work should be fun, work should be play, there should be laughter. So in fact, when I do my workshops, I try to take it in this manner, because I think when there's a lot of fun, people feel more comfortable, they're able to express themselves better. But in a workplace, how practical is it? Because, sometimes what I've observed is when the leader is too serious, then sometimes people lack the psychological safety to just be themselves. Or I've seen both extremes, to be honest. But in a workplace, how practical do you think it is to let people just be, have fun, laugh around and joke? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, I think it would vary a bit depending on the industry you look at, but the common theme, going back to one of the earlier points, is once we have that purpose defined and outcome defined, I think a lot of rest of the activities should be based on that. The reason I'm mentioning that work could be fun or playful, all of that, as long as the individuals are interested in the job and know what they do, you don't micromanage. Things get more serious when you start following up or micromanage every hour, every minute they put into the job. So once that is removed, a lot of conversations become informal, and I've seen my team members at least move on freely without worrying who's watching them, right? And that for me is 50% of the job done. Now in terms of, for example, if we had, again a live example from my current setup, since we set it up from scratch, when we built out this facility at DLF IT Park here, we had a space for 250 to 75 people, and then we wanted to be like a startup, knowing very well this is a very regulated industry in the US. So at least the mentality, mindset, we wanted it to be a startup, but also know the limitations. One thing all of us agreed, especially those who got recruited, the first 100 people who decided everything on the floor, we said there needs to be a recreation place on the floor. Typically, a lot of companies don't invest because of real estate, all of that. Once that is set up, it was right bang on the middle of the floor. And there were conversations around, should we put a glass wall around it, door, access, control, all of that. The predominant and majority of the opinion was, no more access controls. Allow the individuals, they know what they have to deliver. we will go outcome based. We are not going to monitor how much time somebody spends in a TT game or a pool table, right? And you won't believe me, we had kept it open, and we had technology operations running over 24/7 shift, even our help desk functions, who take calls, customer calls. I don't purposefully sit and notice, but whenever you see, I used to go and play with them as well. So whenever you watch, people will go there, pick up their TT racket, play for 15 minutes, and they will be back at their seat. Wow. They very well know that this or our manager is not getting an Excel report stating your team members spent 2 hours in this location and so on, because we didn't have an access control set. We left it to them stating work is fun as long as you manage the outcome. End of 8 hours, 9 hours, you know what to deliver to your US counterparts. We will measure you by that, right? And so everyone took the responsibility on their own. And now we have 4 facilities built across Chennai and Bangalore. We followed the same pattern of having this across. So it all boils down to what you define as fun. I mean, day-to-day work can be fun as long as you're not micromanaged, and you're also told what you're responsible for, and leave it to the individuals to manage. Beyond that, approachability of leaders, managers, I think that's part of our work culture, but it's very important for the individuals to have a buy-in into the entire thing.
I love the fact that you focus on outcome based, because I think that totally shifts the perspective.
Oh, we have business operations team which works in SLA model, right? Every hour is important for them. So that's why I said each industry is different, but all of us, as including my business operations or the other leaders, wanted to make this happen, because we didn't want one side of the floor to feel different from the other. You won't believe me, they come in night shift. They come at 7:30 and go at 4 a.m. in the morning. Not many of us are around on the floor. But that is a team which probably said, at 4 a.m. I have to deliver something to Dallas team, and before I leave. So I know what is my responsibility. They actually came back and said, this has broken the monotony where we were just sitting at our desk and looking at the documents. I got a 15-minute break without going out anywhere or chatting with my friend on something else.
Wow. So, I think I would like to say this. A team that plays together stays together. Yeah, so I think that's a good example that you shared. Thanks for that, Anand. And Navaneeth, to you. Like I said, most people, the human mind is that we crave for appreciation and recognition. While everybody knows that and acknowledges it, yet there's something that stops people. I mean, simple thing like social media. People would have seen your post or something, and then not just mine, others as well, they say, oh, I did see your post, and then when they meet you, they say it's nice, but they don't want to acknowledge it. I mean, that's, of course, more informal, but even in the workplace, I have noticed people don't like to sometimes appreciate. So what do you think that really stops, what is coming in their way? What stops them from appreciation?
I think a large part of it is cultural and how we grew up. Look at when we were in school and you did very well. Your parents would never tell in front of you, you are brilliant. Yes. You will meet one uncle outside, hey, when you are not there, your dad said very good things about it. Because they said, appreciate panna talek paid on. It is largely cultural. I think this will get solved with this generation because we are far more appreciative of our kids.
True.
To my mind, it is largely cultural. And I've tried to figure this out and see how one can solve for it. And I've used various experiments. 9 out of 10 times. See, there are outliers who will stay outliers. 9 out of 10 times, people don't appreciate others because they don't feel appreciated themselves.
Oh, yes.
So you start appreciating them, and I've seen them. Seen them change brilliantly. Sometimes it's insecurity. Very often it's a bad leadership trait to use appreciation or the lack of it as a control mechanism. We suffer from that. And because of our culture, upbringing, sometimes we are privileged, and small things we are not grateful for, right? So when was the last time somebody thanked the guy who operated the elevator? When was the last time we thanked the guy who served us coffee? When was the last time you went and thanked the guy who gave you your food at canteen? We are all exceptionally privileged to have those things. And if it starts from there, you will be able to create a culture of appreciation. For instance, one of the things I do in our canteen is after a meal, every day I go back and say thanks to everybody who serves us. They are staff, they are interested in welfare. And last month somebody told me, sir, now 30, 40 people come and thank us.
Wow.
And this doesn't happen through workshops, this doesn't happen through circulars. You do an outbound activity, it is forgotten the next day. You read a book, it's forgotten that night. Sometimes it takes somebody's behavior to be seen, observed and copied. But I still feel it's largely cultural. Because we grew up thinking you should be stingy with appreciation but lavish with criticism. And if you grow up like that, you won't change easily.
No, that's a very nice way of saying it. Yeah, gratitude, and yeah, I think once we start appreciating and acknowledging, I guess it kind of spreads and others also hopefully would follow suit. Anand, to you, the ritual 6, he talks about self-leadership, right? So as a leader, what would you like to share about it? Because self-leadership is something that is definitely important, because only if you develop yourself, can you, as a leader, help others to develop themselves. So what is your take there?
This was an interesting ritual and not always easy to kind of follow or explain. But for me, the way I look at it is anything, when we speak about walk the talk and so on, I think it starts from there. Before you go and preach your team or tell the team what to do, for sure, we need to make sure that I'm comfortable with what I'm going to communicate and I can implement that if I'm in the shoes. So that starts from there. And then the constant learning. For a couple of my managers in Infosys as well as Mr. Kupades have taught how to be, you need to be a pretty hands-on person if you have to be relevant, in my opinion, right? Otherwise, at some point, people will make out you're just talking vapor, right? It's important that you continue to learn, make an attempt to understand what are the ground level challenges the team face, and for that, it can't just come with a 1 hour preparation before the meeting. You need to be constantly looking at, reading through and understanding what the teams are working on. Otherwise, at least accept that I need a 1 hour refresher to go through that before we start discussing in detail. So if you accept that your limitations, people will be more than happy to come forward and explain. But it's all the more important you continue to learn. A lot of this is behavioral as well, right? So you don't have a reason to say that probably because of lack of time, etc., I'm not doing self-development. I think we can always find time. So in my case, I try to, for example, spend some of the parts of the weekend, or talking to Navaneeth earlier, on my Max blog, or take topics of interest. I try to stay away from the TV, not social media. I do still follow sports and so on, but do something which I'm passionate about, because I always feel that keeps your left part of the brain busy and kind of gives a relief from the day-to-day activities you're working on. More importantly, for me, the work will be always good, and the team also should look at it that way. If everyone is looking towards a Monday morning, that speaks, that speaks a lot to the health of the company. If people are waiting for a Friday evening, then probably something is going wrong there, right? It's not about taking a break, but only if there is a purpose, people look for a Monday morning to come back to work. And other thing, in terms of, we don't have leaders should not, leaders, when I say leaders, it's not just senior folks, but anyone cannot come up with reasons. One of the powerful message, I work for Mohanram Foundation, like I mentioned earlier, and with Sujit, who is with Infosys now, but we have been working on this for the last 8-9 years. So we do meet students every year. We onboard underprivileged students. The very fact when you do the first conversation, you will be humbled, right? So you feel grounded when you do the interviews and conversations. There are a lot of powerful stories. Last year, so we do this interview panel every year. April, May, June, this is the time we do interviews to onboard students. We at least interview 1,000 people split across panels. So I was in an interview panel with one of my HR colleague, like any other regular day. So we had this candidate who was visually challenged. Let's call him Ram for this thing, right? For ease of communication. So Ram comes on the call. It took us a few seconds to realize that he was visually challenged. But he started introducing himself in such a way that he said, why did he choose this career, right? From 8th to 12th, how did he go about choosing the subjects he wanted? All right, first thing is done. And the confidence, that's what mattered. Second one was, I asked him what do you typically do? What do you read? He said, I write the works of poems of Rudyard Kipling and Ruskin Bond. I was like, okay, but in the same vein, he said, modern history is a topic I like, but I still think I need to get better there. I need to do some more work. That was humility directly there. And this was an individual who's probably a better leader than few of us sitting in front of him at that point, acknowledging what are his so-called shortcomings at that point and also some of his strengths. Then he said, English, I understand why English is a powerful language. It's required for communication, so I'm investing a lot of time to learn English. And I was like, a lot of us don't do that till we reach corporate world. We leave that soft skills aside. Then he blew our mind and he said, I said, okay, we were aware that there is Braille and others to assist them in reading. Honestly, I felt bad that I didn't do more homework in terms of how technology has improved. I said, how do you manage RAM? How do you read through all of that? He said, oh, not at all a problem. Mobile technology has improved so much in the last 5 to 6 years. I have every information on my mobile, and a lot of the books I told you and the modern history concept I was talking about, I have read through them. Audiobooks, and I'm fairly comfortable with what technology has created a difference for people like me. And here I'm thinking that a lot of us who have access to a lot of this technology gadgets still complain about what is not available, right? In terms of realizing that, so sitting in front of a person of that nature, you understand what needs to be done about self-leadership, where do you need to invest time, and you don't have really a reason to say you don't have time and infrastructure to do that, right? And lastly, practical day-to-day life, which I've observed, while it's important, why we set self-development as where we lead the way, a lot of us do. And when my daughter was 5 or 6, when we drive down the car, any traffic light, she would say, Appa, yellow signal, so we have to go fast. I said, no, yellow actually means you have to go slow. So I used to stop the car. I used to do this ritual regularly, particularly, not just when she was there, but got used to it. And now, she's 18 now. And so whenever I go with her, even if I'm on a call talking to someone and suppose I try to miss the signal, she says, it's turning yellow, so probably better you need to stop. Kids learn from us. When we talk about self-development, that's why I said this is a pretty complex topic. Kids follow what we do, and so it starts from home, and it's not just at office. People at office are going to follow what you are. For me, we talk about integrity as a key trait for a leader. Integrity, everyone knows the meaning, but it became more important for me in the last 2 years because integrity is about doing the right things when no one is watching you. It's not just about not doing the right things, it's just doing the right things. It's about doing the right things and no one is watching. And last 2 years, all of us were at home and nobody was watching you, right? So it was important that you were taking decisions as a developer, as a security guard or a CEO when no one was around you. So that way, if you walk the talk literally, when people observe you and see what you do, they are going to literally follow. Otherwise, you would say, Anand did this, so I think it's okay. We should also be able to do that, right? You lead the way from that angle. So it's important that self-development, it's about learning, it's about humility, and some of the integrity traits combined together.
Very lovely. No worries. That was lovely share. So in fact, the book also has this line, it just remembered. He says, if you're rude to somebody, you're actually giving them the permission to be rude to others as a leader. Yeah, so lovely points you shared there, Anand. Thanks. So probably I think it's time, maybe we should open up for questions. Then of course, the answers will be, anybody here? Anyone, anything online?
Yeah, there's a question from
Yes.
Sukanya, please.
Maybe somebody can give her the mic.
Madam, like in the beginning, you told us about the 8 rituals that has been described in the book. But I had read some of the books of Robin Sharma, particularly The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Who Will Cry When You Die. In these 2 books also, I find lot of similarity, like what are all the myths that we should follow to lead a very successful and a peaceful life. So like, is it the impact of the author on his writing, or is it needed for the topic on which the book has been written? Because I had read some books of Robin Sharma. In all these books, I find like there is a sort of an advice given to how to lead a very peaceful life. Definitely there will be one guru, he will be advising people that makes him to transform into a monk, from a businessman to some person. Especially who will cry when you die. It's still more different. We can't think about those areas, no? Who will cry when I die? So like what happens, I find the impact of the author, it is his style of writing, or like this is how the justice is done to the topic.
Yes.
I just want to.
Yes, very nice, interesting thought. So I would think, each person has their own style of writing, has their own way of communicating whatever message. So I think my perception is that he thinks he wants to help people get better at what they're doing. So I guess that's why he is combining these different things.
Just to add, I think he keeps it simple in terms of the examples he provides, or people relate to philosophy very quickly, right? Whenever we also get bogged down at work, we'll get philosophical. Oh, life should have been this way. Probably from next week I should follow this practice. So, all of the authors know that human tendency, stating he talks about getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm sure when I read that couple of times, I said, next week I'm getting up at 5 a.m., right? So obviously he uses a lot of those levers to drive a message, but some of that in terms of going back to the self-development thing, where physicality, where you take care of yourself. A lot of us, at least I don't do a great job there at this point. We still don't take care of our health to that extent. But we also have a reason to say why we are not. So the way he conveys his story, he looks at the daily aspects. Sometimes it may look ideal, but if you take a step back, you will also realize we can make time for some of those. I think.
At least if you're not reaching that level, somewhere midway, at least if we can basically get better from where you are, I guess that helps. So, yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Can you please comment on qualities of unique leaders?
Maybe 2 or 3 qualities, any of you would like.
You want to go first?
Could you say, in your view, who are the few people who come to your mind when you say unique leaders?
Tell some names. Okay.
Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Kalpana Chalwa, Kamarajar.
Kamarajar.
Yeah, that'll do. That's fine.
Good.
And once you have those names, it's easy to see what probably was common, right? Integrity, number one, and I think Anand spoke about integrity being non-negotiable. Somewhere society over self, and single-minded, passionate pursuit of what they believe in are, I think, some of the things that link them together, but I'm sure there's much more to that than what I said.
Yeah, so I think each person stands out because of their uniqueness. So it's not just one thing. There could be umpteen number of things. A lot of it discussed in the book, whatever we've discussed till now. And then, like Navaneeth said, it's those points. And I think for a leader, it's very important to empower the team. How are you developing the team? How are you helping them to get better? Personally, professionally, like Anand said, you talk to your team about your financial planning, for example, right? So basically, you're helping the team to get better in different spheres. as a leader, I think that is a very key quality. Now, even if you notice Dr. Kalam, for instance, he was always talking about, things for your welfare. When I say you and me and everybody around us. So I think when you care more for the people around you, that really heightens your leadership skills. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So apart from what they study in textbook, is there any other unique qualities that you can tell us from industry? Because a leader has to work hard, he should be good in communication, mission, vision. So 20 points they will read. We also teach, that's different. Apart from industry, practically, is there any unique quality, apart from what is there in textbook, is expected from a leader?
Yeah.
That's what she actually meant to ask.
Sure, I can take a few of those again, hand it over back to them. Leadership qualities, like I said earlier, it doesn't start after you reach 15 years of experience. So it starts even today, you as a student. So first thing, practically, for example, if I am recruiting someone, I start from there, right? So as students or any employee, your attitude is going to be important. Attitude cannot be taught, aptitude can be taught. So remember that. You will study, you will gain knowledge tomorrow, you will work in one coding language, you will learn finance day after tomorrow. But attitude is something nobody can teach you. The way you approach work, you approach an interview, that way develop your right attitude, right? People can make out. When somebody comes for an interview, even if they struggle to answer a couple of questions, there is a training program to groom them. But if you come with a wrong attitude, people are switched off then and there. So that's number one. Number two, once you are in a job or even as a student, so going back to what Sangeeta said, empathy, while we talk about it as a leadership trait, like I said, it's an individual trait, right? You need to put yourself in another person's shoes before you let out a statement. Tamil proverb is there, like where you say, watch before you speak, right? In short terms. So, a lot of people just let out statement without understanding the situation the other person is. Empathy starts from there. Understand what that person is going through before making a comment. That makes you a better team player, which grooms you into a better leader. Integrity, honesty, all of that goes without saying, but each one of us learn it in different form and shape. A lot of it has to do with our upbringing and core values and culture also. The traffic light example I gave, depending on how you behave, your family or kids will behave as well, right? And lastly, in terms of, more importantly, when you start working with larger teams, in terms of larger groups, ensure that you carry the team along. Right? A lot of times people feel that, going back to the appreciation point which Navaneeth said, sometimes it's the culture. People don't appreciate because they feel whether they are losing out to the other person, right? So imagine a case where the teams are supportive of each other. That's where you come together and deliver better. So these are few areas where when people are starting off for a career, starting with the right attitude, rest of it will fall in place as long as you have the right approach to everything.
Yes, lovely. I would say team first. It shouldn't be your personal selfish thing, but put your team first, the team's goals and the visions. And there's one more thing also I wanted to say. Yeah, the team first and ego. Avoid the ego in the team. Those are the things, yeah.
Great, thank you. I think we have about 280 participants watching this program online on various social media channels of MMA. And we have about 5-6 questions that have come to me as well. So maybe we'll take just one or two just to satisfy them. Maybe we can give some short answers. The first question is from Rita Mathur. She is from Bangalore. She is asked, the authors, many authors are very utopian and idealistic in what they write. In this book, are the 8 rituals mentioned, are they only idealistic or are they practical and feasible? Maybe Ms. Sangeeta can.
Okay, I think partly we answered earlier. See, books are a powerful way to reinforce the message. That's first point. Every book, every author has a style in communicating those messages. So take it with a pinch of salt that some of these leadership traits could be differently paraphrased in other books. But the core underlying theme remains the same. It's up to us to look at where we are today, constantly look at learning as an opportunity. Don't stop learning. Approach everything in such a way that be ready for a change. Like I said, change would happen when you're driving in a traffic or whether you're in office fighting a fire. Ensure that you carry the team along. So a lot of the underlying themes is what we should look at rather than just these 8 rituals. It's very important that if you constantly look at learning as an opportunity and continuously groom yourselves, people are going to respect you as well, which will leave a better legacy. And lastly, giving back to the society or knowledge sharing. I think a lot of it, people do keep it to themselves with the worry that they think sometimes it's unique or they are probably indispensable. Honestly, none of us are indispensable at any role, at any part of within the country or within any organization. All of us are dispensable in some form. A good leader is a person whom, when he or she leaves or steps out to another role, there are 2 other people at least to take up that role. If there is a situation where there is no one, it's a failure on the leadership quality, right? So sometimes people feel I'll keep everything to myself and not give it to others. In fact, you should always make yourself dispensable and ready to move on to something else. That's how you groom most of the people. So in short, I think a lot of leadership can be spoken about in different form books. This is a reinforcement. Look at it that way, but practice it and put it in practice. I think that's how it is.
Also, I think, certain things could be like feasible for me, certain things could be feasible for him. So I think it is very individualistic.
Okay.
So whatever they are able to identify, resonate and, work upon that, I think it is workable. Personal preferences.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I think we'll take one more question. I think first we'll go to Navaneeth for this question and others can add on. So this is from Mr. Raghunandan Trichy. He says, sir, in your media career, you must have met people from different backgrounds, like sports, cinema, corporate world, etc. Have you found different traits in the leaders of these different domains, or you think the traits are common in all leaders?
Interesting question.
That's a very interesting question, right? And I don't know, I have to think about it. See, there are 2 kinds of people you meet. People you meet because, like I said, you're privileged enough, and the people you want to meet. I think the people I really want to meet and I am inspired by, irrespective of where they are from, there are some common traits that attract me and that inspire me. One could be a cricketer, one could be a composer, one could be an astronaut, one could be a scientist. But if these are people I have sought out to meet, there's a unifying theme that inspires me. You also meet a lot of people because you like to meet, because you have to meet them, and I don't think too much about those meetings. So I don't know the answer to that part of the question. But people I seek out to meet are bound by a certain common code, a certain common ethic, and they appeal to me and inspire to me because there's something similar about them.
Great. Would you like to add on, both of you, anything?
To me, I think I like to pick individual qualities in, whoever inspires me, what is a trait that I'm inspired by. So whatever I like from each individual, I like to pick that and then learn and, sharpen and get better with my leadership skills. That's what I would say.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the individual had asked about somebody from media industry and how different it is. Yes, one of the trait, one thing we should not try to do, which is not spoken about in the book, and since this question came up that stuck, is that one size fits for all approach, which we try to do many times. That should not be done. Just because it worked in Mr. Cooper, it doesn't mean it will work in the Hindu and vice versa, right? Some of the ideas, when we tend to box everything under one umbrella and say, it worked here, so I'm sure when I go to the next company, the same idea would work, may not. That is something which leaders as well as the employees need to be mindful of, because there will be always that urgency to say, it shouldn't matter across domains, it should be same. There is that uniqueness each industry, each domain would bring along. You have to customize it, right? But going back to what Sangeeta said, basic qualities, whatever has been spoken about, and what we spoke during the last 1 hour, I think those, in my opinion, are common denominator. It doesn't matter which industry you are from, the attitude, the empathy, the learnability aspect has to be common. It doesn't matter which industry you are, whether you are a student or a corporate person, all of that.
Thank you. I think that is all the time we have today, but I think to sum it up, we had a fabulous session. I think 3 different speakers from 3 different domains, and the appreciable fact was that, they brought out the lessons from the book. Not only brought out the lessons from the book, I think they also blended their own personal experiences and reinforced the thoughts of the author, bringing their own experiences from their own lives. So that, I think, should actually deserve a very good round of applause from all of us this evening. And time for us to honor the guests who have taken their time off today to be with us this busy evening. So may I request Ms. Sangeeta to join me in handing over the memento that we give her here, sir, because you guys read so much. We only give you books. So please read more and come back to us next time. Ms. Sangeeta, please join me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to all those who are watching us online this evening. Until we meet again next time and joining us for the next program on the 23rd, wishing you all a very happy evening. Get back home safe. Good night.